Why specifically are refined sugars a problem for humans in excess? Hey everybody, I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. This is one of these topics that a lot of people try to touch upon. I've noticed for years and years people try to touch upon this in the fitness and health world, but they completely miss the mark. They get so caught up in the fact that because they're simple sugars or the insulin response that they don't realize that these things themselves are not actually problems. They're not problems. There's a far more specific, more detailed problem with refined sugars. And by refined sugars, I mean specifically ones that contain large amounts of fructose. Let me give you your big three sources. Table sugar, also known as sucrose. Sucrose would be the chemical name. High fructose corn syrup and honey. Those are the three most common. This is 99% of all refined fructose that we get in our diets comes from one of these three sources, usually kind of in that order in terms of total quantity in society. Although maybe in the U.S., high fructose corn syrup might exceed table sugar at this point. The point being, from this perspective, they're all equally bad. And I'm not saying there aren't some health positives to honey, by the way, when I make that statement. What I'm saying is, on the end of it, that we're concerned with it being a refined sugar, it is still identical to table sugar in terms of our concerns here. So keep that in mind. Like with everything else, most things that we consume can have both positive and negative effects in the body. And honey would be a perfect example, right? Perfect example. There's some antioxidants and other stuff potentially very, very good in there. But it's still a refined sugar and refined fructose, and it doesn't matter that bees refined it, right, instead of people. That doesn't magically make it better. Oh, it doesn't have problems because bees did it, right? Not humans, but bees. Bees are mythical, magical creatures who, when they refine stuff, it doesn't cause any problems. Yeah, that's not how it works. It's a refined sugar. For the same reasons, or like literally when we discuss in a minute. So the issue with fructose is not that humans can't handle fructose. Fructose has been a normal part of human history for millions of years. Okay, we had access to fruit. Our pre-ancestors had access to fruit all the time. It was normal. So fruit sugars and fairly limited, even actually fairly high amounts, really are not necessarily problematic for us. Because our bodies can convert them into glucose. Glucose is our primary fuel source. So anytime you see someone trying to pretend that glucose is bad, just run. They don't know basic biology. They don't understand that even protein, if you're going to burn protein as a fuel source on an ultra high protein diet, you're still burning glucose because your body is converting it into glucose. Like glucose is the primary and preferred fuel source for the human body. We have some cells that require glucose, like they cannot burn anything else. You will straight up die in an extremely short period of time with no glucose. And by short, I'm not talking days, we're talking potentially minutes. So, kind of an important distinction here. We thrive on glucose when we manage it correctly and we don't have compromised problems. We don't have damage to our pancreas or our liver or things like that. Okay, so I'll be context specific there. In a normal metabolically healthy human, we thrive on glucose. Obviously, if you're diabetic type 2 because you've damaged your body with terrible lifestyles, or type 1, you've been born with it, okay, that's different. Or maybe after you've had some pancreas cancer. Okay, we're getting into medical issues though. Talking about metabolically healthy people, glucose is actually what we thrive on. So the thing is, our body seeks to turn other stuff into glucose. It will turn protein into glucose. It wants to turn fructose into glucose. It wants to turn lipids into it. Even we will take some of the fat that we consume and convert it to glucose off the glycerol backing if we need to. Our body wants glucose. It thrives on it. It needs it. It will try to find ways to create it if possible. Fructose we cannot burn for fuel. Fortunately, we've had access to it for so long in limited quantities because, again, historically, going back thousands and actually technically millions of years, we've had access to it. So our body tries to convert it, and it has the means to do so because we're not going to waste food. If we can get access to a food source, when food was scarce, our body wants to try to use it. So since we can't burn the fructose, it's not a viable fuel source. The first thing is a healthy gut. Our lower intestine can convert large amounts of fructose into glucose if we have healthy gut biome. Okay? The issue, refined sugars don't reach the lower intestine. Okay, so again, we come back over table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, honey. Most of them don't reach the lower intestine. They don't really get to your gut biome to the same degree. They don't have time for it to be fermented. A lot of our gut biome, particularly when there's more fiber in our diet, can ferment fructose into glucose so that by the time it hits the bloodstream, we got glucose. Great, fantastic. These others, because they get absorbed in the upper intestine because they're already broken down, our stomach acids can cleave them into free glucose and fructose. We're absorbing both into our bloodstream in the upper intestine. Right? There's just not as much time. You start adding fiber to it, though, it changes that quite a bit, right? And most fruits, they're in a matrix of a whole food. They're not fully broken down. Like the upper intestine, there's still some of the digestion process going on. And most of that reaches the lower intestine. Some of it does get through the upper, but nowhere near to the degree that, say, the refined sugars do get absorbed. So once they get absorbed, our body has other mechanisms because some of the fructose does get absorbed there, right? Even historically. So our body has developed an enzyme in a limited quantity that can break it down and convert some of that fructose into glucose directly in the bloodstream. However, when the amount that we're consuming exceeds it at the rate that we can produce this enzyme, so again, faster versus slower absorbing kind of matter here, right? It's not just how much you get in a day, it's how much was loaded per hour, okay? Because we can keep making this enzyme in trace amounts throughout the day, but we only have so much of it. Anything left over hits the liver, okay? Technically, fructose is a poison. Our liver will deal with it in the same process that it does with alcohol, right? So ethanol, right? Our liver can handle, we can convert ethanol into glucose. It takes a toll on the liver though, okay? And fructose does the same thing for the exact same reason. This is why refined sugars are a problem for us. They put a load on the liver, they put a strain on the liver, they raise triglycerides accordingly, they cause accumulation of liver fat. If you remember, when we get too much alcohol, we get sclerosis of the liver. We can get the same effect from excessive amounts of refined sugar. It is documented. Non-alcoholic fatty liver is actually a thing. It is a diagnosed medical phenomenon that only exists when we have access to large amounts of refined sugars. Okay, this is the problem. This creates all the insulin issues, the insulin resistance, the metabolic syndrome. Okay, the two things that cause this the highest to happen in the liver are saturated fat and fructose. Like that's your two big ones. This is why refined sugars are a problem. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.